President Obama facing criticism from all angles as he completes the first 100 days of his second term. The president getting slammed for his policies on the economy, on Benghazi, the ongoing crisis in Syria, and I'm only naming just a couple here. Still, take a look at this. A new Rasmussen poll suggests Americans are pretty evenly split when it comes to approval of the president's performance right now. Let's bring in our political insiders. John Leboutillier, former Republican congressman for New York. Pat Caddell, Fox News contributor and a former pollster for President Jimmy Carter. And Doug Schoen, Fox News contributor, former pollster for Bill Clinton. It's Cinco de Mayo. These guys wanted to do tequila shots before air. And I said, no. You got to wait. So, Doug, look. The new jobs numbers came out for the month of April, 165,000. Okay, so a little bit better than expected, but still barely enough to keep up with the people entering the workforce.
Well, that's right. And unemployment's down a little, largely because there's been substantial drop out of the economy by discouraged workers and others who just don't see anything. But bottom line, Greg, this is a presidency that is adrift. Last week we talked about how the administration was adrift on issues. Nothing makes that point better than Syria today, where we're not sure what the red line or the game changer is, but Israel looks to be doing our work now.
You know, Pat, I got to put up on the screen that after 4 years, this is what we have under President Obama. Unemployment down fractionally. 22 million jobless are underemployed. Labor participation rate lowest since you were hanging out with Jimmy Carter.
Yes, and that was before women, so many women worked.
Food stamps, welfare doubled, disability claims record high, gas prices up almost 90%, GDP growth is awful, and debt approaching $17 trillion, and yet the president's at 50%.
Well, he's at 50% because everyone made such a big deal out of those numbers. Has been slipping, and as Doug pointed out to me and John, the New York Times numbers on specific issues, he is in the low 40s. But understand something. Everything he talks about, like this press conference, he doesn't address the economy. We don't address these problems. By the way, they're solving the GDP problem. They're changing the formula, so we'll look better for growth, just like these numbers.
It's window dressing.
It's window dressing. But here's in the unemployment report, despite the increase in jobs, no hours went up. But that press conference for this week,
let me play a soundbite. Here is the president during this news conference. Take a listen.
Their base thinks that compromise with me is somehow a betrayal. They're worried about primaries, and I understand all that. And we're going to try to do everything we can to create a permission structure for them to be able to do what's going to be best for the country. But it's going to take some time.
Congressman, what the HE double golf clubs is permission structure?
I've never seen a president with such baloney as that. First of all, he goes right to blaming the Republicans for his own failures. Okay, he'll pick up the phone, call Jason Collins, the basketball player, the gay basketball player, to congratulate him, but he won't pick up the phone to call senators to lobby them for background checks.
He didn't call the night of Benghazi to find out what was happening with dead Americans.
Exactly.
Well, because he was getting ready to go out to Vegas.
Something important.
This fundraiser. But here's the thing, this permission structure thing. Can you imagine LBJ or Bill Clinton in trying to negotiate with Congress, making this excuse, I can't get their permission. They have a permission structure, and I have to figure a way around it.
He's not leading, he's blaming? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, of course he's blaming.
That New York Times poll that Pat alluded to, the president's rating on the deficit is 33%. As you correctly suggested, Greg, there's no agenda on the economy, on job creation, on economic growth, and this is about leadership.
Well, I want to talk a little bit more about the news conference. Well, there are the numbers. Look at that. 41%, 44, 33.
33 in the deficit.
That's improving his handling of it. Last week, Greg, what did he do last week? Two big things. He's the first president to ever go to the Planned Parenthood National Convention, and he calls his basketball player. That is his highlight of the week.
Here's a couple
left social agenda.
Here's a couple of comments from the Washington Post. Dana Milbank. It's never a good sign for a president if he feels compelled to assure the public that he still has a pulse. And Jennifer Rubin said this: the president's press conference was jammed with half-truths, evasions, out-and-out misrepresentation, some so stunning, even mainstream reporters took to snarking in their tweets. The tone of condescension was striking.
Well, we're going to discuss healthcare. I mean, his whole description of the wonderful, the land of Oz of the healthcare. How great it was.
We're there.
But no, the Plan B. He does the thing. He is the person. His Justice Department has just gone to court against the judge on the Plan B, and they won now 15-year-olds. The New York Times.
The day after birth control pill.
The day after birth control. Where he doesn't mention anything about Gus.
ABC's Jonathan Karl got him to act as though he was going to pick up his ball and bat and go home. Here's his soundbite from the news conference.
Do you still have the juice to get the rest of your agenda through this Congress?
Well, if you put it that way, Jonathan, maybe I should just pack up and go home. Golly.
Greg, the idea that the president would make light of a serious question, wouldn't talk about his ideas, wouldn't talk about leading the country forward, wouldn't talk about the crises we're facing in the economy, immigration, guns, Syria, Benghazi. The fact that he's talking in that line is just so discouraging.
Petty and petulant?
Yes, absolutely.
Doug, it comes from... He ran an empty campaign last year only on beating Romney, not elect me because I'm going to do A, B, and C. Right. So he gets reelected. But here we are 6 months after the election. He has nothing that he cares about other than himself, and it's empty, and that's why he's adrift, and there's nothing happening.
Peggy Noonan said he's not a lame duck, he's just lame.
Well, look, the one that's blowing up on him is Benghazi and Boston. I mean, we're at a point here.
They're morphing together, aren't they?
Well, the Boston bombing, he said, this is tough stuff.
And then he gets back on this, it's tough stuff, and he said, there's self-radicalization, this refusal to accept. But then we go back with what's happening with the FBI releasing the pictures. These two things are blending together, and Benghazi's starting to come apart, as we have said on this show. The president has a problem on this, and we found out this week. And Wednesday, we're going to have one set of things. We're going to have these people testify from the State Department who've gotten lawyers so they can listen.
One of them is Gregg Hitz, number 2 American diplomat in Libya. Let's put up on the screen what we learned today. He said everybody immediately knew it was a terror attack. I've never reported a demonstration. I reported an attack on the consulate. Chris, meaning Chris Stevens, the late ambassador's last report, if you want to say this final report, is, Greg, we are under attack. And then Gregg Hitz watches Susan Rice on the 5 Sunday talk shows, and then he says this: my jaw hit the floor as I watched this, meaning Susan Rice. I have never been as embarrassed in my life, in my career, as that day.
Greg, this is the purest example of the introduction of politics, win the election at all costs, into a serious terrorist attack on the anniversary of 9/11. The Obama administration was just trying to get through the event. They were just trying to get through November. And bottom line, this is something that is not resolved.
Look at this. What we're saying, it's not only not resolved, CBS, they got on this today.
Sure.
Today, Bob Schieffer used the magic word cover-up, which the mainstream media will not do.
He was with Darrell Issa, who's going to be chairing the committee.
But he said, he introduced the piece saying this is a potential cover-up. The people are saying this could be potentially a cover-up. I am telling you, it was a cover-up, and the problem is it's all about politics, and it has explosive. We know 2 things this week. Al-Qaeda group was hired to protect our people. But more into the point about the cover-up is the talking points. We got copies of the drafts. The intelligence committee said Al-Qaeda. They took it out. There was never any mention about a video. None.
Greg,
so where did this come from?
This cries out for the Republican leadership, John Boehner in the House, to name a select committee.
Why hasn't he done it?
Well, maybe
members of Congress have been begging
because there are 5 standing committees, each investigating it.
There are 135 members, and I'll tell you, I was in Dallas yesterday. I was speaking to some of these people, Republican donors, and they were complaining. I just said, tell them you're not going to send me more money.
Yeah, the donors should stop the money until he names this committee.
Yep.
All right. Jay Carney said this about Benghazi. Take a listen.
If someone were to come forward, if they just haven't technically told their superior or something, if they were to come forward, is the White House willing to let them testify?
Well, again, I mean, that's a hypothetical, but let's be clear. Benghazi happened a long time ago.
A long time ago. It was in
Greg,
September.
this is unbelievable. At the time, it was delay, delay, delay. Now it's the past. The president himself in the WhiteHouse.gov video said that's been discussed before. It's now something that somehow isn't worthy of consideration.
You worked for Bill Clinton. Hillary Clinton's testified, but what difference does it make now? That's what she said.
They're in hot water on this deal. I'm telling you, the Republicans ought to realize they can't miss. They're two Democrat stars.
You can't lie this much and cover up when people are dead without it coming out. And look, it's 200 and some days since the president promised these people be brought to justice.
Do you think the American public is paying attention? Look at the latest polling data here, and we'll put it up. 32%. The Obama administration's job in explaining Benghazi, excellent or good job.
That
32%.
means 2/3 of the American people, Greg, about 68%, have either a neutral or more likely a negative opinion. They are paying attention, even though Fox is the only network that systematically covers Benghazi. You can't lose an ambassador on the anniversary of 9/11 and cover it up.
In that poll, the most impressive number to me was that 66% of those people in that poll said they were either following this closely or very closely. And Fox has been the only place, and some online. What happens? CNN finally put the pictures up. If CBS...
Is the media covering this up to help the president, do you think?
There was a poll about
That's all they
elections.
ever do.
But they believe they can get away with it still. And at the bottom of this is the same problem, which is all we see is the law.
One simple point.
And people died.
There still is a terrorism crisis in this country. The Obama administration had said we'd broken al-Qaeda. Clearly, they were wrong.
Boston, this is what...
Well, the president said he was self-radicalized as if to dismiss it.
Yes.
And Biden went up there to the funeral of the MIT cop, and he called them knockoff jihadists.
This effort to look, Tom
you don't want to
Friedman
interfere with the president's narrative, do you?
What?
You want to tell the truth.
Just tell the truth. Tom Friedman said, by the way, you notice what he said last week? This is all, you can't continue to do.
We're going to talk about what you wanted to talk about, which is Obamacare, coming up, the President's Affordable Health Care Act, and he does enjoy using the term Obamacare, losing favor among those who once supported it.
Even if we do everything perfectly, there'll still be glitches and bumps, and there'll be stories that can be written that says, oh, look, this thing's not working the way it's supposed to, and this happened and that happened. And that's pretty much true of every government program that's ever been set up.
Glitches and bumps. Political panel is back. John Leboutillier, Pat Caddell, Doug Schoen. John, glitches and bumps.
Well, Pat has pointed out to us that this bill was 1,200 pages, I think.
20-some hundred.
Or 2,000. It was a gigantic, talk about a government program.
And 20,000 regs.
Okay, but the entire New Deal of FDR was 200 pages. So this thing is gigantic, and he's trying to minimize what every politician is now realizing, both Democrat and Republican, Greg. This thing is going to be not only a train wreck, as they called it, but it could be the political issue.
The president in his news conference said for 90% of Americans, this thing has already happened, and the only impact is better, stronger insurance.
Well, I just think that's not true. Premiums are up. The program itself is enormously complicated.
Millions are losing their coverage.
That is certainly true as well. The healthcare exchanges are largely
a mess.
They're not being implemented. And the whole Medicaid program with the states, again, up for grabs.
It's not happening.
Bottom line, this is the big issue of the 2014 election, if only the Republicans...
Maybe. Let's go to that point. But let's deal with one thing in here, which is its benefits. This Pollyannish view. He promised at the end of his first term that your premiums would go down $2,500. He gave a specific date number. They're up $3,000 on average. All right. This is blowing up. You have Baucus saying it's a train wreck. Harry Reid saying it's a train wreck.
Baucus is a Democrat.
Baucus was one of the principal authors. But it would look. This is the issue that cost the Democrats the House in 10. It was the issue that would have won for the Republicans if they hadn't abandoned in 12. And the question is, they could take this, and every Democrat is terrified because now, look, people are losing their jobs. One woman said on TV, I can't work 29 hours, can't feed my family. That's what employers will give me, part-time work.
Dr. Daniel Kessler, who is an expert on health care, teaches at Stanford, said it appears that 30 to 40 million people will be damaged in some fashion by the Affordable Care Act, more than 1 in 10 Americans.
Right, and it's probably already dampening economic recovery. It's probably part of the reason it's for sluggish job growth, because people are being taken off full-time jobs, moved to part-time, or employers in some cases are taking fines instead of paying for the health care for their workers. It's all going badly, but we're here to talk about the politics of it. And the politics are the Republicans should seize this thing smartly. Not just pass useless legislation to repeal it in the House, which will go nowhere in the Senate.
Which is what they've done so far.
Yeah, but it won't. That's not real. But how about coming forward and saying, you know what, the economy can't take this bill right yet. Let us vote to delay implementation for 5 years and see if the economy is better.
Ted Cruz proposed this. A few weeks ago, every Democrat in the Senate voted against it, including the pretend independents.
Didn't the president promise that once it's implemented, people will love it? Take a look at the Kaiser poll. Did we put that up? Here's the Kaiser poll. 35% think have a favorable view of it. 40% unfavorable. 20% no opinion.
It's ever been.
Look, this is a low point by a poll and an organization that has, at the very least, been very sympathetic to the measure. Bottom line, if the Republicans get a handle on this issue, Greg, it could give them the Senate in 2014.
The thing that John said and what Cruz said was interesting. If you start saying instead of these useless repeal, stop it, postpone it,
delay it,
which is effectively killing it. Democrats, every time you have another disaster.
Got to leave it at that.
Greg, the winning formula. Delay that thing and investigate Benghazi, and Republicans can win the Congress
John
back next
Leboutillier,
year.
Pat Caddell, Doug Schoen, our political insiders. Good to see you guys. Get more political insiders every Monday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern at live.foxnews.com. And they'll, of course, be back here next Sunday. You can also follow them on Twitter at FN Insiders. Don't go away. We'll be right back.